Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Just 12 seconds to go. Well, what a fourth quarter for Trae Young. Young has scored the last 11 Atlanta points.
And here's that standing ovation and applause I was talking about.
And the Hawks take the series in 5, winning 2 of the games here at the Garden. Atlanta's first playoff series win since the first round in 2016 for Nate McMillan's first playoff win since 2005 back in his days at Seattle.
Marv Albert, Reggie Miller, TNT with the final call as the Hawks take down the Knicks 103-89. They win the first round series and advance to the Eastern Conference semifinals in 5 games. Trae Young, 36 points last night, and let me start there. He played the villain role as well as you could play it. The bow at the end. As a diehard Knick fan, I have no issue with that. Look, if the Knick fan's going to give it to Trae Young and boo him and chant, Trae is balding and all that, well, Trae has every right to give it right back. You could talk all that talk as long as you back it up. Clint Capella, he talked all that talk yesterday before the game, and you know what? Capella set the tone for Atlanta. He was great all series long, and he was really great in Game 5. He protected the rim. I mean, the Knicks just really never got going in this game. And Trae Young absolutely destroyed the Knicks in pretty much every game of the series. He was the best player on the floor the entire series. It was a tremendous performance all series long by a player making his playoff debut. So I have nothing against Trae Young. I tip my cap to Trae Young. That guy can play. He's an outstanding player. And look, I'll say this about the Knicks. Despite the loss last night, this is the most optimistic I think the Knicks fan can be about their team in at least 8 years. The future is bright for this team. They are far from a finished product. Losing stinks. Believe me. It stunk watching the Knicks just get outplayed last night. It stunk that they could not get going offensively, that Julius Randle did not have another great game. That Derrick Rose looked like he was out of gas. But it doesn't take away from the fact that, A, the Knicks' future is bright, but more importantly, the season they just had is one of the great seasons we've seen from this Knicks team in the last 20 years, and that's not hyperbole. The Knicks were supposed to win 22 and a half games this year, and they ended up winning 41 and had home court in a playoff series. Would you have liked to get to the second round? Of course. Would you have liked to push the Hawks to a longer series? Of course. But it doesn't take away from the fact that this team massively overachieved. That this team has a really young core in place that now just got playoff experience. RJ Barrett, 20 years old. Emmanuel Quickley, rookie. Mitchell Robinson, 3rd year in the league. I mean, there are some real players on this team that just got playoff experience that are only going to get better going forward. Obviously, a big question this offseason will be, well, what do you do with Randall? You could pick up his 3rd-year option. You could offer him an extension. I think losing to the Hawks in the way they did might end up being a better thing long-term for the Knicks because it might have them realize, all right, Randall's very good, had an amazing year. We owe him a ton for helping us get back to the playoffs and change the perception of the organization. But he's not a number 1. And I think the Knicks knew that, but now they have the confirmation. Randall's probably a 3 on a championship team, if we're being honest. A really good 3, but he's probably a 3. Maybe a 2 if your 1 is that good. And I think the Knicks realized that. And they got to see that play out against a team that had more talent than they do. And that's the thing. The foundation's being set. Now you got to add to it. You can't skip steps in a rebuild process, and the Knicks are still rebuilding. They have a talented young core. They had the lowest salary cap number in the NBA this year. On top of the fact they did not do anything at the trade deadline because it wasn't about just this year. It's about the future. The Knicks have 7 first-rounders over the next 5 years. 7. Including 2 this year. Cap space, a great head coach, a front office that seems like they have a legitimate plan. I'm bummed they lost, believe me, but I'm not going to sit here and act like, it's an epic failure that the Knicks lost to the more talented team in 5 games. It's not. It stinks, But given the fact the Knicks were supposed to be awful this year and we got to watch a team that played hard every night, how could you be that upset? You can't skip steps in a rebuild process. And the Knicks now become a destination team once again. The next time there's a disgruntled star that wants out, the Knicks will be on that star's list. The next time there's a top free agent, the Knicks will be on that star's list. Derrick Rose, after the game last night, is talking about who wouldn't want to play for the Knicks in New York. That's a former league MVP saying that. And Derrick Rose should absolutely be brought back. He is a perfect fit for this team. The losing to the Hawks does not take away from this Knicks season and, all the great moments that team provided. It just doesn't. If anything, it's just an eye-opening, experience for the front office that, you know what? They clearly need more talent. Well, let's not act like the Knicks didn't know that. Let's not act like the Knicks thought Julius Randle was going to be the number one on a championship team. He's a really good player. He had a great season. But we saw in the playoffs that to take the next step, the Knicks need more talent. They need another scorer. Trae Young dominated this series. He could score and assist whenever he had to. The Knicks need that type of player. They're still searching for it. And that's the key going forward. This was RJ Barrett postgame on it only being the beginning for the New York Knicks.
Just 12.
I'm just proud of us laying a foundation, for the future. Get the Knicks, back on the right track. And, I'm 20. I'm hoping to be here for a very long time, hoping to win many more games, get to many more playoffs, get championships, hoping for all that. And I think, this is a really good experience.
He's right. He's only 20. And the core of this team is still really young. And this head coach has proven he's one of the best in the NBA and should win Coach of the Year. So, despite the loss, the player development, the experience that the Knicks got, that's what it's all about. Because ultimately, if you would have told any Knicks fan going into the year they'd win 41 games and have home court in a playoff round, they would have told you that you were, on drugs. All right, we talked about this Knicks team maybe getting in as a 10th seed to be in the play-in tournament. They were the 4th seed in the East. This is just the start, not the end. This is different than that Carmelo team that won 54 games with all those veterans. That team was old. That team was a flash in the pan. The Knicks finally have a foundation. They finally have a real head coach. They finally have changed the reputation of the franchise. This year was a massive success despite the loss. But you give credit to the Hawks. They are really good. I don't think they'll beat the Sixers. But, man, Trae Young is playing at some level right now. And anyone that's upset, if you're a Knicks fan, that, Trae Young is bowing and all that, well, you shouldn't be. I think you got to tip your cap. If those guys want to talk smack and they back it up, you can't argue with it. This was Trae Young after the game on his bow to the MSG faithful after he hit his final three-pointer.
Yeah, the bow is something I did it in high school after I hit a game winner, and leading up to this game, I know where we are. I know it's a bunch of shows around this city, and I know what they do when the show is over. So that's pretty much what it was. So
I think you got to respect the hell out of the fact that a lot of guys don't want to embrace being the villain. He does. I have no issue with Trae Young at all. No issue at all. I love the back and forth. I think that's sports. I think you need some of that. I like the fact that the Knicks and Hawks don't like one another, that it was chippy, that it was edgy. Well, we don't get that in the NBA anymore. And how great would it be if the Knicks and Hawks now become this real rivalry, that they meet again in the playoffs? That's what you hope for. Two teams that don't like each other, that go back and forth like that. The Knicks just need more talent. They know that, though. They're not a finished product. This is only the beginning, as RJ Barrett said. He's right. As far as what the Knicks could look at doing this offseason, look, there's no obvious superstar that's out there. It's not a great free agent class unless Kawhi Leonard's coming to New York, and I don't see that happening. So you look at the options for the Knicks. Could be a trade. Could be maybe an under-the-radar signing. They need more scoring. I think they need a point guard. That's obvious. I'd bring back Derrick Rose. I'd sign Randall to an extension if it's not the ultimate max, if it's reasonable. If not, I would just pick up his third-year option. Let it play out and see what he does next year. But as long as you have Thibodeau, you're not going to be a lottery team. You're going to be in the mix all year. The Knicks just play too hard. They're too well coached. But now you've got to add an infusion of talent. So it's disappointing overall to lose. But man, as a Knicks fan, the Knicks gave you so much more than you could ever have hoped for. You got to just appreciate what this team brought to the city of New York. Because for the last 8 years, the Knicks were a laughingstock. We're a lottery team that could never win the lottery, oh, by the way. And here they are now, back to respectability for the first time in a long, long time. Mission accomplished for the Knicks in 2020, 2021. 800-224-2004 is the number. If you want to get involved this morning on the phones, you can also tweet me at Jake Asman. That's JakeAsman. If you want to weigh in on the Knicks and the Hawks. Coming up next, we get to the other games in the NBA playoffs last night, including Luka Doncic dominating the LA Clippers as the Mavs go up 3-2 over the LA Clips. Incredible performance by Luka. And every single game of that series, the road team has won. Shades of the 2019 World Series, dare I say. We'll talk about that game and much more coming up next right here. Jake Asman with you. This is the Jake Asman Show on Sports Map Radio.
Sports Map all night.